your regular fix of the best guests from the world of data and analytics. This is the Data Mix with Brian Bouden and George Beaton. Good afternoon, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Wow, we've made it to another one.
I know. It's moving thick and fast, eh? Like we're working our way through our technical issues and getting our timings right and all kinds of stuff. It seems to be one an episode nowadays, but it's all good. It's all good. We're
It
here.
is,
We're
yeah.
alive.
And it's becoming, there's a bit of muscle memory in there now as well. So
Yeah.
get there.
It's starting to feel a bit more polished despite the ragged edges. It's getting there. It's getting there. Well, it's week 2 of school holidays here. What's your chat? That's my chat. It's week 2 of school holidays, so there's lots of entertaining to do, especially later on this week. So
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to a long weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That'll be the first holiday since Christmas. Boohoo. I can hear a lot of people crying for me or playing their tiny violins.
yeah.
But it's been, this first quarter has been quite grueling
Mhm.
work-wise. So I'm looking forward to 4 days off.
I can feel you, honestly. It's a hard slog right now, right? There's a lot of exciting things happening, but a lot of things happening nonetheless. So,
Indeed.
but it's all good. We're a few minutes late. Just getting kicked off today. We had a few technical hitches in the background, so I think we'll just get cracked on with the episode, shall we?
Let's do it.
We're kind of in this weekly cadence at the moment, folks, just because we've been catching up a little bit. We've got tons of stuff that we've done, and we're just keen to get into it now. So I think we're on the weeklies for a little while yet. And with that in mind, if you like what you see, you know what to do. I think I'm now picking a preference here. Maybe I'll alter this one for the next time just to put Apple on there. Apple is the one. When you download the podcast and we see the stats in the background, 67% of our pod downloads come on Apple. So that is the one. The 5-star reviews make a difference there. Thank you very much. Just keep it swift and move on, really, mate. So I guess that puts us in known territory of the data fix. You ready for it?
I am. We've got an interesting one this week as well.
All right. Well, let's get you in the right state of mind here. So we have the data fix where we catch up on the tech news that's happened over the last, well, in this case, weeks since we last talked. So George, what is the news?
Well, there was quite a few to choose from again. I tried to stay away from the mainstream ones, for example, tariffs, but it's difficult. It's really difficult. So this has got a bit of a tariff flavor, but it ties in quite nicely to our guest this week, and also our theme of data. So what we've seen this week is a major shift brewing in the transatlantic tech landscape. And at the heart of it is data, revenue, and the role of digital communities. And digital communities is something we're going to talk a lot about on this session. So what's been happening? The European Commission has proposed something unprecedented, a potential tariff on advertising revenues earned by US tech giants like Meta and Google, part of a wider trade negotiation pause. But the move signals a growing willingness in Europe to assert its power not just through regulation, but through economics. And why does this matter? Well, because platforms like Meta and Google earn tens of billions from European users, and that's largely thanks to the data that they generate. And now the same data is being tapped for the next frontier, AI. So in 2025, Meta began training its large language models on public content from European users, from posts, comments, chatbot interactions, and the idea is to reflect Europe's language and cultures more accurately. But this has obviously raised immediate concerns around privacy consent under GDPR. And that brings us to today's theme, which is trust. On one hand, we can see a vast algorithm-driven networks where data and content scale fast, but often without clear community oversight or accountability. And on the other, we're seeing a growing push towards more intentional human-scale digital communities, spaces where trust, identity, and shared purpose matter as much as reach. And that's exactly what today's guest is going to explore. In a moment, Brian will introduce someone who's helping reshape how we build communities on the web and how those communities are transforming the way we hire, collaborate, and share meaningful, trusted information online. It's a timely conversation, Brian, in a world where value of data isn't just in platforms that collect it, but in the communities that create it.
I think this is interesting. You know what? This falls under the category of I'll release something when something else major is happening in the hope that it goes under the radar. And
Yeah,
I think that's exactly what's happening here is that tariffs are out there in the world and taking off the full-blown edge of these types of issues. But it's not so long ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, and I specifically remember an episode of Dragon's Den in the UK where there was a product that was basically about monetizing your own data, right? And everyone got put the maximum amount behind it from the Dragon's perspective, but this is like a real issue. I think like the super conglomerates have gotten away for so long before even the LLM side of things started. So long of just processing whatever data they wanted, however they wanted, and hiding it under small print and tick boxes that were pre-ticked, even though they don't comply with GDPR. And that's a bit of a sweeping statement, but this is really, to sound like ChatGPT, a game changer in terms of how this data is dealt with in the public domain.
yeah,
And it's about damn time.
yeah,
Sorry, but it is. It's about damn time that Facebook and Apple and Meta and Google and all of these companies started paying for what this data is worth.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
it's not ethically okay just to hoover up all data in the world about everything. And it's super sly to start training LLMs with a silent tick box and us having to unconsent. That is like ethically wrong, programmatically wrong. Like, like imagine if you just walked up to a person and said, "I'm going to use your speech to train someone else's speech," and but I'm not going to tell you about it. But I'm doing the courtesy of telling you now, but I'm not going to tell you about it really. So that's a bit of a rant, but I think this is high time. It really
Mm.
is.
Yeah, and do you know what the irony is? The irony is that this was really kicked off by the US president's tariffs because
Mhm.
the Europe was looking at, okay, how do we respond to this? And one of the things that these tariffs hadn't touched was services. So services, the services that we sell to the US or the services the US sell to us were not touched. But now what we're looking at is advertising revenue from these. So if we were to, if Europe was to tax advertising revenue, then maybe in a funny way we'll start getting the true value of that data. Will maybe start coming back and hitting our pockets again.
Maybe, and I think the point that you mentioned about public domain was really interesting as well, and it ties in very tightly with what we're going to talk about today. So I think we'll use that as a kind of seamless rollover into the next phase, mate. But thank you very much, guys. That was George with today's data fix. So thank you very much, George. That was cool. And that puts us back in the land of the episode after the data fix as well. So today's guest, as you mentioned, is very, very interesting guy. Taylor Desseyn is the VP of Global Community at Torq. And Torq is pioneering a new way of employment. Is the only way I can think. Community-based employment or community-sourced employment for tech and data. And I think this is quite a departure from the old job board way of doing things, and just being able to hold each other's hand a bit more through the process and make it feel more of a gamification. And I think Taylor's a really interesting guy as well. Almost got a chance to go and meet him at Copenhagen earlier on this year, but it didn't quite work out. So maybe in the future. But your thoughts before we bring him on?
I think we're in for an interesting ride here. There's a lot of energy in this episode. Taylor's a fantastic guy, and I think when it comes to communities, one of the things that we know as humans, and especially as Scots, is that you tend to get on with the people that you know. Whether everybody's got their own personality, etc., but you know that personality if they're your neighbour, if they're in your community. And so you know how to treat them and deal with them. You know what to ask them. You know what to trust them for and what maybe not to trust them for. And I think when the internet is as big as it is, there's an awful lot of anonymous people there. There's a lot of snake oil sellers, etc. So I think what Taylor is pioneering is could be a game changer for the way that people start dealing with each other again on the internet. So I'm really interested. We're in a new world here. So
Yeah, we are, and let's just cut to the chase and get him on, shall we? Because I know we started a few minutes later as well. So let's speak to Taylor Desseyn, VP of Global Community at Torq. Hey everyone, as we just talked about, we're here. George is here, Brian is here, and down here we've got Taylor. Hey Taylor, how are you?
Let's go.
Hey,
it's good to see you, boys. Glad to be here.
Yeah, George, it's exciting to have Taylor here, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We're joining up all three corners of the Western world right now.
So are we all allowed to say where we are right now? I think that's okay. Right. Well, I'm here. I'm home near Edinburgh. So Taylor, you're next.
Yep.
Where are you?
Yeah, I'm in the glorious Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, wonderful.
George,
and I'm in
can you beat that?
Yep, I'm in the pretty darn cold Oslo, Norway, in the northern hemisphere right now. -5. What's that in Fahrenheit?
So -5 Celsius to.
He's checking Google. You can
checking
tell
right now.
He's checking Google.
I'm going to say it's around 20.
I think it's around
20 degrees.
Yeah.
We've got like a nice triangular trifecta of geographies, though, so it works out quite well. Not sure if it's a nice triangle, but it's a triangle of some kind. Right? It's isosceles or some kind. Anywho's, Taylor, it's a joy to have you on the show with us. This has been a long time in the making, so thank you so much for coming along. How are you today?
I'm great. Again, I'm always blessed to be on really a technical podcast as a non-technical person and being willing to obviously share my thoughts. So again, blessed to be here. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and we ain't going to get too technical here. But we were talking before the show, and we were talking before the show how our last guest, Curtis from Slack, again was on your show, and so there's a bit of syncopation there, which is nice as well. But I think what's nice is that you guys do have a common link and you work in the DevRel communities, but I think your roles are quite different. So like as a community manager, because don't get me wrong, that's your like official title, right? You're community manager. Yep. Tell us a little bit about what community management means in the realm of how you deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, a little backstory for those of you who are listening. And again, subscribe to the Data Mix. So basically, it's interesting. I was talking to you, Brian, backstage before George hopped on, and it's hilarious because I essentially career transitioned from a traditional recruiter to, I mean, really a non-technical DevRel, right? Which is what I call community. And I told you, Brian, backstage, and I'm gonna say it here because I'm very open. Like, I have dealt with the most amount of imposter syndrome my entire career over the last 4 years, right? Because I went from a traditional recruiter, right? I would cold call Brian, I would cold call George and be like, hey, please work with me. I'm different. Please, I have a job for you. And then, Brian, George, like, oh, no, not again, not another recruiter. And for me, I started to see DevRel, quote unquote, kind of pop up on my LinkedIn, right? With people like Curtis and all these amazing DevRel individuals. I was like, man, I really feel like this makes a lot of sense, right? You have individuals at a company that are out in the community, breaking bread, going to conferences, spreading the good word of their product. And I was like, the talent industry doesn't have anything like this. Right now, we don't have a product. Our product is the people. So I would almost argue that the talent industry needs the DevRel role more than the DevRel needs that role, if that makes sense, right? Because literally for us, we are people first. Like the entire talent industry is people first. And the fact that there is nothing like this in the industry, to me, is crazy. And so, I started to emulate all these amazing DevRel individuals, and I had a lot of pushback over my last 4 years. I heard a lot of, Taylor, I don't know what to do with you. Taylor, what do you want to do? We want to put you in sales. But then it's like, well, you can't really hold me to a metric because I'm not outbound calling all the time. And then it's like, well, we're going to put you on marketing. But it's like, but I'm out here meeting with CIOs, CTOs, and helping hire their teams, and I'm in the community. So it's been an interesting 4 years for me. And again, I know I'm working for Torq. So obviously I got to give them a plug. But what I truly mean is I truly have my dream job. Like I truly have my dream job now, and the ability to create DevRel for talent, which is what we're doing at Torq, and really loving on people. And I'm not, trying to create a tutorial video on how to code the latest SaaS, blah, 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 right? What we're doing is like, hey, here are 10 ways to write a resume. Hey, here are 6 ways to interview with a hiring manager. Hey, here's the best way to negotiate an offer. And those things, in my opinion, single-handedly transform people's careers, sometimes more than just another tutorial video, right? And so I know there's a lot of weight on our team. There's a lot of people looking at our team for kind of leveling up their career, and I don't take it lightly. And it's to be able to do this at scale the way we're doing at Torq is a huge blessing.
I think that's really cool, and I want to seg you into something similar but different there, and that I think career progression of individuals in the tech industry is sometimes an incredibly overlooked thing. So I don't mean overlooked. What I mean is it's routine. It seems routine to be able to move from role to role and to have the capability to do that. But the thing that you mentioned about you get to go to all these cool conferences, but have you ever been to a cool recruitment conference? Probably not.
I've never been. You know what? I've never even been invited to I've been invited. They do, and they're real terrible in my opinion, right? Like they're really nerdy. Like they're even more weirder than tech conferences. Like, and listen, I'm a nerd at heart, but like, let's be honest, we're all nerds, right? And some of us can be a little weird, and that's okay. Recruitment conferences are really weird. And what's even crazy is I giggle. It doesn't bother me. I promise it doesn't bother me. But literally, there's a big recruiting conference that happens in Nashville every year, and like no one's ever been like on the staff been like, hey, you've been a recruiter. I'm very out there on LinkedIn. Like I'm very public. I've got no invites, and that's okay. I'm okay with that because you all are my people. I resonate more with the developers at this point in my career than I do recruiters, which is why I think I'm kind of in the best spot right now.
You are in a good spot, and I'll offer one more before I let George get one in. And I just think that the way that you put it, and that DevRel doesn't need the tech as much as the tech needs the DevRel from the people side, and that's completely right, because you go to any conference and you can pick up technical skills at any conference, right? Yeah.
Yes.
How do you find the right people? If you're going to a conference and you've got 3,000 people there and you need to like lock down a persona of 5 to 10 individuals that meet a type, how do you go about finding that? And I think that's the challenge that you're trying to address, which is like incredibly awesome, because 95% of people go to tech conferences for tech. But there is a small proportion of people that go to tech conferences to meet the people and to engage with those people as part of their network. So how does that sound right?
No, it sounds right. I saw an interesting trend, which is why I knew early I was on the right track, and which is more of a confirmation lately for me and what we're doing at the Torq team, because in my opinion, so years ago, so I was very blessed. I was elected VP of the .NET user group in Nashville back in like 2015, 16. I was elected by my friends in the tech community as VP of the .NET user group. It was averaging 100, 150. This is when meetups were still in vogue, right? We were averaging 100, 150 people a month. And one of the most highly attended meetups consistently was the January meetup. And guess what the topic was?
Recruitment.
The job search.
Yeah.
Job search.
It wasn't Blazor. It wasn't the latest version of C#. It wasn't how to develop a mobile app using Xamarin, which is not even Xamarin now. I think it's like Maui or something like that now. But like, it wasn't that. It was the job search. And so for me, it's one of these things. So I saw that, right? I really feel like one of the things I do well is kind of seeing trends early before it happens. And so I was like, man, people are so hungry for this job search talk, this job search panel. So why can't I continue to replicate this from a conference perspective to speak? You know, my conference talk in Amsterdam in a few weeks is exposing the interview process, right? Basically educating people and giving them the playbook to succeed in the job search. And it's like, for me, and there's been even more of an appetite lately. I've been very blessed, but really the last 3 conferences I've spoke at was packed out rooms. Like when I spoke at All Things Open in Raleigh, we had to turn people away. We had to turn about 40 people away out of 80 people in my room. Like Todd Lewis, who runs All Things Open, was like, we probably need to put you in a bigger room next year. But like, you know, again, there's just this appetite. And again, for me, being able to give back, I think is just so incredibly important to the tech industry.
Yeah. So Taylor, I'm curious now, because I have a vision in my head of a developer, and I've been a developer in the past.
Yep.
And what I wasn't really hungry for as a developer was a promotion or the next sort of level up.
Sure.
But I might have been I might have been unique there. Are developers then just looking for like a better company to work in, one that gives you better benefits, maybe free lunches or whatever, or are they looking for promotion when they're coming? What's the general ideas there?
You know, this is why it's so hard to do what we do, because we have to speak to everybody, and everybody is at a different stage in their career, right? So George, you weren't necessarily wanting promotion. But usually
I just wanted a free lunch and
right,
a free drinks machine.
Or you just wanted to be a part of a community to share and not be alone, right? One of my keynotes at that conference 2 years ago was, you're not alone, right? And so one of the unofficial slogans for Torq is welcome home, because we want this to be a home base for you in your career and however you want to use us, right? So a lot of developers want to race. Right. A lot of developers just want to vibe and be at their spot that they're at and just, you know, speak at conferences and learn things. But the thing is we have to develop content, meaningful content for individuals that want a promotion, that want to raise, or that want to stay where they're at. And we have to continue to meet people where they're at, which is part of the difficulty in creating content, right? If you're a DevRel person at a software company, you put out a new feature, you know exactly, like, we are going to speak to that feature. We're going to put it out on YouTube. We're going to have people watch it. For us, we're trying to speak to George, who may just want a community of data folks or AI folks to share his latest LLM project, which is what we have at Torq. Or Brian, who may not know how to ask for a raise at his company. We got to give specific bullet points to Brian to how to approach his manager when it comes to a raise. Those two things are very different pieces of content. And that's something that we have to do and we have to address, which is one of the biggest problems that we have at Torq.
Yeah, and like a follow-up to that, Taylor, you talk about the different like people personas in terms of like employees, but George and I have gone slightly different paths recently as well, and that he's working for a large consultancy, but I'm kind of out on my own as a small consultancy, and you might even call that a contractor or single person business at times. And again, that's a different market, right? 100%. And that we've chatted to a few people recently. Curtis was one of them. Ben Rogojan again is sort of taking that path from being like a fan company to being his own company, and a very successful one. But the point that I'm trying to get to is that gamut of people you have to appeal to is very wide. So I'm guessing you probably have to be quite keyed in on the personas that you're working to get to, and that must make like an unending content loop.
Oh, it's unending. I mean, it's unending. It's a lot
of people find content hard, but in your case, content must be like, oh my God, I've got 10,000 things I need to talk about today.
One of the biggest problems I have, and if any of my teams listens to this in the future, they're going to giggle at me because I am just like ADD central. I have a Google Doc that I just dump ideas. And I was like, we got to do this. Literally in Slack, I'm getting blown up on Slack because I dumped some ideas. But like, I even popped off like 2 ideas today. This morning, I'm literally looking at it. My team's hazing me because like I just throw out all these ideas that I want to do and try to address. And it's like what's important now, right? And I think as we're starting this journey, as a Torq team and starting to put out meaningful content, let's just go to what the root of people want. How to write a resume, how to write a LinkedIn, how do you leverage the Torq platform to find a job or build a community? Those are 3 things that we're just focused on right now. And then over time, we'll slowly build that out. But it's definitely a challenge. And it's a lot of listening. I run my mouth for a living, but I also listen a ton and I watch a ton. And, you know, my team is in our Discord. We scaled our Discord from about 900 people to close to 4,000 people in a few months. And like, we're constantly listening to people and what they're complaining about or asking about. And we're just kind of putting that into our content plan to make sure we're developing content for people that they actually want to read and leverage.
And are you actually facilitating people getting jobs then, or are you just providing the content around that? How closely tied are you to that like final recruitment piece, and how much of it is like we are the community that helps you get to the last mile and then you have to make the jump yourself? Is there separation there, or how does it work?
So that's something we're trying to iterate on. I'm not, in full transparency, we're not as close as we need to be. So Torq is a jobs platform. So the way it works is you join our platform, you complete your profile, and then we reach out to you when we have something that's a fit for you. Now, what we're trying to do is trying to develop within our product. And I literally met with our head of product, Ken Collins, yesterday. He's a big AI guy. You guys should probably interview him too. So Ken Collins, head of product, we were actually talking about trying to get our jobs public to where people can actually submit their profile and they can have control over it. Because right now it's like you fill out your profile and you kind of wait. But my job and our team's job is to we have stuff going off every day in our Discord, in our lives. Like, you can meet other people every single day within our community. But I would really want our community a little bit closer tied to jobs. So that's something we're iterating on right now that we're not perfect on, and we're aware of that. But right now, we definitely have the ecosystem for you to get plugged in and show up to a live, show up to a networking event. We're actually, I'm launching next Thursday in our Discord, in the Torq Discord, laid off lounge Thursdays. So I've had a bunch of my friends get laid off. I don't know what's in the water right now. In the last week, I've had so many people get laid off this week. So I was like, you know what? I want to help them. So we're going to go live in Discord every Thursday and just ask questions and just be a resource for people that they typically would have to pay $300 to $400 an hour for like a career resource. And we're just offering it for free in the Discord.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I know why people are being laid off. Doge, the Department of the Trump policies are starting to hit. But hey, let's keep this non-political.
Yeah, that'd be a whole nother conversation of itself. We'll stay in community focus right now.
Yeah. So that does open up a question. I hope you don't mind me asking. But then, what is the monetization model of Torq then? Are the companies with opportunities seeing you then as a different model, as a different, you're not the standard approaching on LinkedIn type recruitment company that's then going to charge between 20 and 100% of a first year salary? What's your model on that side?
Yeah, model's very standard. I mean, if anybody's listening to this, we're very, from a pay perspective, from a pricing perspective, very similar to just like a staffing model, right? You only pay us if you place a developer, right? One of Torq's specialties is our nearshore capability. One of my goals within the Torq community is to build community in Latin America. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of really good engineers on our platform from South America and Mexico. And so a lot of companies use us for that. And so like we can do contracting, contract to hire, full-time placement, consulting stuff. We kind of do it all from that model. It is free for the developer to join. All they got to do is create a profile on torq.dev, and they have access to all the resources. One of the coolest stats that I've learned recently since starting is traditionally when a recruiter messages a developer from a staffing company, like cold DMs, their response rate's only 25%. So if I message 10 people, I'm only hearing back from 2.5% of those people, right? Or no, 2.5 people. When you message somebody on the Torq platform, so if you use us, and this is why my job and community is so important, is the response rate is 70%.
Interesting.
So if we send a message, if our matching team, we have a matching team at Torq, sends a DM to somebody on the talent platform, the response rate is 7 out of 10. So speed is tremendous. We have a case study of helping a client that we basically took away. I mean, the hours is ridiculous. It's like hundreds of hours of interviewing we like alleviated from this one client. This one client went from like, hey, we only want to see a developer. We're still going to bring them through four traditional interviews, to now we've staffed up so many individuals with them. They message our sales guy on Slack and go, hey, we need this developer tomorrow. You guys know the product fit or profile fit. Just go ahead and get them started tomorrow.
Wow. Taylor, you mentioned nearshore capabilities.
Yep.
Just then be clear about the service. Are you actually providing a sort of business process BPO type service in any form or fashion, or is it individual contractors, consultants?
I mean, for the most, we're probably individual contractors, but like, you know, like we had I hopped on a call with a VP of engineering. He's one of my buddies a few days ago. Like, they need to develop a mobile SDK for their iOS and Android to tie into some sort of application, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have any of the resources. They're going to manage the project, but then they need us to like slide in 3 resources and just roll. Okay. Right. So however you want to call that, but I would say traditionally what we do is we do everything except manage the actual project. We still want you to manage the project, but we will make it easy. Because my buddy who's a VP of engineering, he said, I don't have the bandwidth to hire. Like, I don't have the bandwidth right now to sit in interviews and interview 30 mobile devs and pick 3. Right. He goes, I just need the 3 best profiles and just get them started. And that's what we do.
I think you've hit something there, and I want to explain what I mean. So in the UK, like, the concept of the job board has been around a long time, and I can say some big names like Indeed and JobServe and stuff like that. But what I've noticed over the last year or two, and probably it's a post-COVID thing, it ties in quite closely with that, is that people's trust in what they see on job boards is dwindling by the day.
Right. Correct.
Like, fake jobs, rates that don't exist, permanents that are contracts that don't exist.
Yep.
And like you mentioned, like the direct relationship with a recruiter. Now, this is not a slight on all recruiters at all. I don't mean it this way, but there's a very good reason why they only get a 25% response rate. And it's because whenever you try to get something on Indeed or JobServe, you're met with 2 problems. First of all, you never get a response, and it's faceless, so you don't know who's even responding.
Yep. And
second of all, we're living in an age where technology cuts are just rampant right now, 100%. Right? So for every job that is out there publicly advertised, there's like, let's take Power BI as an example, right?
Yeah.
Contract Power BI jobs in the UK, as soon as something goes up on LinkedIn, there's like 150 people on
100%.
it. Like,
so
that's a logistical nightmare for everyone involved, because there's 150 profiles to vet. There's no way to get quickly to an end candidate. And like you say, you've got a multi-tier interview process to get there for a job that maybe isn't well paid enough. So there's so many issues there that makes me think that community sourcing of jobs is actually the way to go. And I've got a friend of mine in another group actually who runs something a little bit similar to what you guys do, not on the same scale, but an aggregated job board with a personalized service that helps you get in through a side door rather than having to go through the. So, like, can you comment on, I know that's a lot of things, but can you comment on that kind of model and how things are becoming different? Because like you say, you've jumped from the recruitment side. So if anyone knows, it's you.
Yeah. No, I think it's dude, hiring just in general is a mess. Right now, it's even more of a mess because of just all the, I mean, like a dear friend of mine, Kelly Vaughn, she's a director of engineering out of Atlanta. She and I text all the time, and she like sends me like, I have 500 people apply to like a mid-level role. It's like, well, who you gonna sift through all that, right? And I think what the cool thing is I think a community first approach and keeping your people engaged. One of the hardest issues that typical recruiting companies have is just for somebody to get back to them. Right? You could have them in your database, but you haven't engaged them at all. So it's like I have a Power BI role, and I recruit a ton on Power BI in the States. And it's like, I'm gonna call one of my Power BI guys that I talked to 6 years ago, but I don't have the ability to like stay in touch with that person. So I'm gonna call Brian from 6 years ago, and Brian's gonna be like, "Who are you?" But then what's so important from a community perspective is if you're doing it through emails and text message marketing and meaningful video content and blogs and one pagers, we can call them, and like all this stuff. Then if I call Brian from 6 years ago, Brian's like, "Oh yeah, I've been in your community for 6 years. I've been actually using all your resources.
Yeah.
I'd love to do this job for you." Right? That is a fundamental shift of how you source people. And the problem is that the recruiting industry is the slowest to innovate. And that's why I'm excited for Torq. Ronstad, you guys probably may be familiar with Ronstad. Ronstad actually bought Torq. And Ronstad bought Torq for a few reasons, one of them being the community first approach. Because Ronstad knows they have to change their approach. And so again, I truly think that the recruiting companies that can change to a community first model, which is very intricate, and that could be a whole nother podcast on how to do it. I think those are the ones that are going to be successful in the next 10 to 15 years.
I got one more point to add on this before George jumps in, and it's actually related to you, George, as well. Like I won't go into the details, but George and I are going through this very thing right now with something that we're doing, right? We're working out people that we're talking to. Are they the right people? Are they the right fit? How do we validate that? How do we like get credentials? And again, going out and outsourcing all of that stuff, it's super difficult, or just trying to do it cold by just like reaching out and saying, just tell me, because like you never know what's going on. And I think that's where this model really is incredibly useful, because you've got like it's basically, if you put it down to a sales perspective, it's a bunch of warm leads for recruitment that you guys are holding, right? So any tech can come up to you and say, hey, we need a X, or we need 2 Ys, and you can be like, well, here's our pool of
that's it.
150 vetted people that have been in our community for 5 years and have contribution levels of over 600, and here they are. And it's easy for you to get that. And that's the bit, right? It's cutting out those first 2 steps or 3
it's cutting out
steps.
hours.
Like, who is this person?
Hours.
Are they telling the truth? Is it right? Can they do what they say they're going to do? So
yeah. And one of the things we're doing, and this is what's really cool, we have the ability for you to tie in your GitHub to your profile.
Nice.
So that's one of the things we submit over to the clients. Like, hey, well, if you get a resume, let's be like, what we're doing at Torq, we're trying to change what the resume is. Like if I hand you a resume, you're like, I mean, this is cool and all, but like, what have you done? What are you actually coding in? Right. And so one of the ways is you have the ability to hook in your GitHub. Another thing that we do is we don't send you a resume. We send you a profile based on what you need from the developer and what that developer has done. We also do video interviews that we send to you. So we have clients that don't even interview. We have clients that just watch our videos and then pull the trigger on that. And we have a whole slew of assessments that we do. So ideally, you can just say, hey, Torq, we need this. We go, we got you. Give us 48 hours. We get 3 or 4 developers for you that has everything. You could look at their video interview. You could look at their GitHub. You could look at their assessments and go, sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm interested then on the people that then don't make the grade. So there must be, you've got a lot of data points. I mean, a lot of data points on people. So you could just about make a decision depending on things like their engagement, their videos, their GitHub, just how good they are for a particular role. But what about, you must get, and I'm going back to Brian's comment about there are charlatans out there. There are people that will say they can do something. They'll maybe take the first couple of weeks of pay before somebody finds out that they're no good at the job. How are you screening for these? Or is it self-screening in the community? What's your...
Yeah, I think, well, first off, tradition, and this is, I think, the biggest challenge, right? So I told y'all the percentage about the LinkedIn response rates. Traditional placement percentages for a traditional talent solutions company is 10%, right? So if we have 100 people on our platform, which we don't, we have way more than that. If we have 100 people on our platform, only 10 people are going to get placed in jobs.
Yeah.
right? So what are we doing with the other 90%? That's something we're talking about right now. To answer your question, I think because of the assessments, because of your you have to have a certain amount of profile completeness to even be considered. You have to have your profile 70% complete. So I'm sure there's a ton of spam on our platform, but we don't even consider you unless you have 70% profile completeness, right? Which is like, there's like 10 things to complete a profile. Essentially, they're all way the same. You just got to get 7 of them done, right? And then on top of that, then what we're talking about internally within the platform is like, how do you badge properly? You know, we want people to be engaged, right? So if you attend 10 of our panels or virtual networking sessions, you need to have that on your profile, right? So if one of our team reaches out to you, like, oh wow, Brian has gone to like 10 meetups, he's done an assessment.
I have at least 10, more than that.
Right.
If anyone needs me, I'm here.
Exactly. So it's like, all right, Brian has done everything we want to do. Then we need to consider him, or at least highly consider him for this role versus maybe somebody coming off the street we have no data from. Right. So to answer your question, George, we're still evaluating that. We don't have a silver bullet yet on that, but there's a lot of steps that you have to go through to even be considered. Mainly complete your profile. Just because you log on doesn't mean you're already be considered. You have to actually complete your profile and take the time to do that.
Yeah, good. And then I think that's really valuable for the people that are then going to ultimately hire the people in your community, because you've done a lot of the hard work for them.
Exactly. Yep.
I think that part is incredibly important from the candidate side, but from like the employer side, I did have a question, and it's another trust question, right? Because you talked about the recruitment game being very slow to change. In my experience, like people who are doing the employing take a bit of time to change as well. And obviously, this is still a relatively new model, right? It's great what you're doing, and it takes away a lot of levels of exposure, but convincing companies to take that leap. Just talk us through that a little bit, because I'm guessing it's not just a case of, hey, we are Torq, I'm Taylor, let's go. What's like the pipeline for you guys to get involved in this with someone at a company that's new to this?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to trust, right? Which is why it's incredibly important. I think going back to community for especially people, I think unfortunately, the traditional talent model is sit behind your phone, smile and dial, call a CIO, call a CTO, call a VP of engineering. Hey, use us. We're good. We promise. Right? It's like, well, okay. So Sally and Brian and Sue and Cynthia have all called me too and said the exact same thing. Right? So it's social proofing is what I call it. Right? Which is why it's so important from a community perspective, marketing perspective, to actually put out meaningful content, right? The traditional buyer, this is just buying in general. People's buying patterns, it takes 7 touch points for somebody to make a decision. 7, right? So like when I was early on recruiting, I'm like, well, all we have right now is a DM and a phone call.
Yeah.
How are we're going to call somebody 7 times? If I call you 7 times, you are going to report me for harassment, right? Yeah. If I send more than 3 emails, you're going to report me for harassment. And so it's one of these things where it's like, how are you getting yourself in front of those clients? And that's where I was like, content's the only way. Content's the only way. Community building's the only way, right? I literally had a tweet go out right before we went live. This is like prime example, Brian. This should answer your question, but I have a few more thoughts. I brought in 3 sales leads in the last week, which is a good sign. The market may be heating up, right? One of the sales leads came from a dinner I threw a year and a half ago. But that relationship started 4.5 years ago. Another relationship that came in is a guy I met at a conference 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Like that is really hard. Like that is like we need an ROI now. That's hard, but man, it comes back around, and that's where people really miss out. So I think that's important. And then I think from an actual getting on the call with hiring managers, it's just like that one client. That one client wanted to bring our candidates through all 4 of their interviews, even though we told them they didn't have to. And then they realized we hit on every single or most candidates, and then they're like, "All right, we trust you."
And it's something, Taylor, that we're we're kind of slowly losing the ability to nurture because of automation, right? Automation is giving us so many tools just to try and hit something and say, and then just
So
ask
many
the same
sales
thing
AI
3
tools
times.
out there. Yeah,
Just give me, okay, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, now sign. And really, I see a lot of this that you can still have that and you can still use that to start the conversation, but it cannot be the conversation, right? And because of that, I think that's why people like you are quite important, because you have to be in the community and willing to put yourself out there and say, let's have this difficult conversation, rather than just say, I'm great at 1, great at 2, great at 3, you should sign me, and I'm not going to have a conversation with you if you don't, which is a way that a lot of companies are still
100%.
operating with automation. So
Yeah.
are you seeing that shift happening?
Shift for the better? No. I mean, I'm
I
still not
saw
seeing
the
it.
hesitation in the pause there.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
it kind of feels like we're in a battle here against automation because the other thing that you mentioned is like the 5-6 year lead time. George and I have been doing this for about that period of time, right? Now, I'm not saying that from a lead perspective, right? But you got to give for a long, long, long time consistently for someone to reach out and say, I really like you, I want to do something with you, right? To think that we can just run 3 of these in 2 weeks and then reach out is not, it's not practical. So I'm agreeing with you completely.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. It's a life lesson to all of us, actually. Keep these things going. We were talking a couple of podcasts ago about the consulting company McKinsey, and they have a mantra, 8 touches a week. So as a consultant, you should be calling up, message on LinkedIn, some kind of communication with 8 contacts a week. And that ultimately then brings the work in. But yeah, you're this point about a long lead time, 100%.
And that's the nuance of community, right? And that's where I've struggled over the course of my year because people, of course, for 4 years, because people want to put me in sales. Well, it's like, but I'm not cold outbounding, right? Even though I bring in leads, right? And then from then it's like, then you're marketing because you're doing the events and you're doing the social media and you're doing all this stuff. It's like, well, yeah, but also too, like, you can't just put me in marketing. And that's why I think, and then like I'm sitting in product meetings, right? Because as a head of community, then you're hearing what the community is complaining about your products. So then you're in product meetings going, hey, the community is saying this, and then I'm in sales meetings helping. So that's why like this role, especially in staffing, is I think so vital, but it's so nuanced and it is a complete fundamental shift, which is why I'm glad Torq and Ronstad have this mindset, because it's not something that you can be like, yeah, we'll give it a shot. Like, no, you don't give community a shot, right?
Yeah.
So again,
I think what you're talking about, Taylor, to like give a sales analogy here, you're basically, and we all are, just by doing this, we're all human lead magnets, right? We're not bits of paper, we're not PDFs, we're not programs, but we are lead magnets for what we do in our areas, right? Because people are buying people. People are not buying stuff.
People don't want to buy from businesses,
like
especially B2B staffing companies. You know how boring that is?
Man. Honestly, when I get a LinkedIn DM that starts off with, I can sell you this, I just respond saying that I don't take cold pitches.
Honestly,
Thanks for good luck. Best of luck in the future with that, but no. So it's cool, it's fair, but I think like the human being is something that needs to be recommoditized ahead of automation, and I think that's something that we're forgetting a little bit as all this is coming in. So like, it's very timely for me, mate, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, and then I have this build in public vlog, and like a lot of people are like, "What's the ROI for this?" And I put out a clip yesterday about me eating the actual corn husk of a tamale. I went to Mexico and ate the corn husk of a tamale, which you're not supposed to, I was told. And like, I think if you're in a business, if you're strictly revenue focused, you're like, that post is dumb. That post is not going to provide ROI. But you know what that does? It shows you're human and funny and goofy, which is what people are going to buy from. Me sitting out there, I sat with a very high up from somebody at Ronstad, and we were just talking about trying to make staffing more human. And to me, it's mind-boggling that the staffing industry does not make themselves more human. put out more things. Like, there's another clip from my last vlog about me like waking up first thing in the morning, my business partner Jason Torres telling me good morning, and me in the Uber ride going, please don't talk to me. And I've had so many people DM me about this, and it's like, I hate to say it, marketing people and B2B, that clip's going to sell more than your stupid stats that you want to put out.
Yeah. I think the problem in a lot of the businesses we're in, even me in consulting, is people want that human connection. You're spending what, 8 hours a day in work. You can't be a robot for 8 hours a day. So just that human connection, building the community. I mean, it's such a novel idea, and I mean, I'm sold. In this,
Thanks,
it works. It works. Taylor, I have one question. I'm not quite sure if we've got enough time for it. So give me your best shot in 60 seconds. But what about the education on the other side, the people doing the hiring, so that they can get the best out of your sort of hand-picked group of people? Because it's easy to hire somebody and you can have a great dev, but if you don't know how to get the best out of that dev, then so is there on the community side, is there anything for the wannabe companies that want to hire your people, or is that
There is,
WIP?
and that's something I'm actively talking to with our sales team, is how do you start building community and giving back to engineers or engineering leaders on like how to hire?
Yeah.
Right. Like, how are your interviews structured? Right. Do you have a rubric? Are you guys all on the same page? Do you guys know what you're interviewing about? Most of the time that's no. So that's something I'm actively talking with our sales team to start putting out content of, hey, if we could basically put out a playbook on how to hire engineers for free, game changer.
I think it would be. Agreed.
That's an amazing way to sort of close off, Taylor. I know that we could easily double the length. We try to be respectful to our awesome viewers that are out there. So, thank you so much for joining us. I think we could definitely have a part 2, TBC,
Please.
in the future. Yeah. We'd love that. But it's been awesome to have you. Thank you very much. George, closing words from you?
Just thank you very much, Taylor. I think you've very much opened up another avenue to myself and hopefully our audience. So thank you very much for that. And we'll be checking out your website.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And we'll catch you back in the main show, guys. Cheers.
Boom, we're done. Brian, I can't hear you.
Now you can hear me. Okay. But that was interesting, right? That was a different slant. And I think community recruitment, give us like your 30-second shot at that, George. Community recruitment. How does that feel after going through that?
Yeah, it solves a lot of the issues that we are seeing out in the industry just now. People trust who they trust, so they like to buy from their friends, they like to buy from people they know. So I think community solves that. And Taylor was throwing out some great numbers there. Without community, 2.5 responses per 10. What was it he called it? Out of 10 people that he would message, you get 2.5 responses, and in the community that goes up to 7.5, and that's just because you've got trust.
I think the gamification of the recruitment process is a very important thing, because I think I mentioned it in the episode, but there's a lot of people out there who are alienated by recruitment at the moment, having been through a lot of ghosting. And again, I'm very careful not to tar everyone with the same brush, but there's a lot of it out there where you don't get responses to anything. Jobs don't exist. You don't get responses to very carefully crafted things that you send out, and it's depleting for the community that is looking for jobs, especially with the tech crunch and all of those factors involved. Every job becomes more important. So it just goes hand in hand, I would say, to be part of a more welcoming and trusting environment to get that first push point. from there. I really do think it's an important step forward here. I don't think the days of Indeed and JobServe are going to last very much longer, just because people are finding alternative ways. And I think there is a real thing here with this community building. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it goes across the board. And what I mean is, like, from the most junior positions up to the most senior. Where I work at Alvarez and Marsal, we do not buy from recruitment consultants now. It is all through word of mouth referrals, or people contacting us through the website. And I think the thing that's pushed most is, you're more likely to get a good hire through somebody that you already know.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is, it's not necessarily just how good you are at the job. Of course, that's important, but it's also how well you get on with the people that you're working with, and that's where the community comes in. And I think that's such a big point that I think a lot of people just will miss. It's, you got to get on with the people that you're working, and the way that you know you're going to get on is, are they your people? Are they in your community, and do you fit in that community?
And angles of referral are just different nowadays, right? A referral used to be Bob talking to Jim, or Jim talking to Jane, saying, this is a good person, hire them. And now very much we're in an evidence-based society where it's not enough to just say Bob's really good. You got to be able to back that up, but the backup is not coming along with your project and showing it in the first or second interview. It's social proof now. It's being able to show that you're part of something, or you've made the effort to be part of something. So I think that is going full circle, and that is where the community element of this recruitment cycle is going to be very, very important. And I think people like Taylor, in his very and I just like the way he's kind of aloof about it, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory term. I just mean that he takes it seriously in a very different way, and that his job is to spread the word. And we're so used to seeing DevRel as a technical role, that what he's showing is that DevRel is something different. And this goes back to the episode with Kurt as well. It's very similar to that as well. You have to lead socially by example as well as technically, and I think that's where the worm is turning here.
Ultimately, quality will be rewarded. So if you do a good job and you turn in a good day's work, then I don't think you've got anything to worry about in the future. And that's a message to all these young people like my two kids that are going into the job market. Put in an honest day's work, and contribute, and you'll get picked up. Hopefully it doesn't get as bad as that Black Mirror episode that you may have watched, where everybody has a sort of social rating. We don't want to go that far.
A bit too Orwellian, but yeah, I think that I go back to the episode that we did with Ben Rogajan as well, and he was talking about make the effort to prove your capability. So if you're out there and you've got a GitHub profile, you're already up on 90% of the people that are out there who don't have anything to show. So, or if you've got something on Tableau Public or Click Community or Power BI, whatever it is, or whatever realm that you work, then make that do a thing for you, and then leverage that when you get into these community scenarios, because then you're just starting on a higher step than a lot of people that are out there. So yeah, very, very cool. And Taylor's just a stand-up guy, man. We'd love to have him back in the future as well.
Yes, so much energy. I loved that episode. I really did.
Yeah, it was very cool. Well, we're running up an hour here. I think we may have had a mishap on LinkedIn, but we've continued carrying on. We'll get it out there eventually anyway. So, but you'll catch us on YouTube and obviously on Apple and Spotify very soon as well. I think we're going to run next week as well, mate. Right? So we're on 1 week cadence at the moment.
Awesome. So we've got Easter in between that. So we'll go out and roll some eggs or whatever you do at this time of the year.
Absolutely. So I think that kind of rounds us off for now, mate. Thank you very much for joining today. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And Taylor was awesome. And we will see you for next week for the next episode of the Data Mix Season 3. Thanks very much, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.